In today's episode, you'll learn about the impacts of AI to the construction industry. We discuss some of the major opportunities and biggest barriers to AI implementation in construction. Finally, we explore how these companies could start and where AI can make the biggest difference. Let's accelerate your business. Welcome to the AI Accelerator for Business show, where you get the latest strategies, tactics, and information about the business benefits of artificial intelligence. My name is Carl Ye. I'm joined by my co-host, Jeff Bradshaw. And today we got a special guest. His name is Bill Black. He's the president and CEO of the Calgary Construction Association. Thank you very much, Bill, for joining us today.
Just wanted to first touch base, Bill, and just kind of get your take on what you're seeing from your membership or in the industry as it relates to AI adoption. Like, is it something that a lot of companies are looking at, or is it something more so they're just talking about? Do you actually see action with AI adoption right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's very tightly related to size of organization. The larger, more substantial organizations, many of whom have IT departments that are larger than most other contractors, they're already well down the road. They have significant amounts invested and teams working on it. In fact, I heard last week from one such entity that has a team of 170 working on AI and AI related and tech related platforms, all to do with modernizing and upscaling their technology applications. So that's one end of the spectrum. But I would say, because 90% of our industry is comprised of people that own a business that might have 15 people or less in the office, sometimes quite a bit less likely to be engaged. They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the budget, and they're nervous of the hype and worried that they jump into something that sounds good and then it isn't and such. So I think most people are smart enough to realize that the sooner the better, because it's only going to become a steeper climb. But I do think, and then the other thing is, in this market, they're slammed. There is so much work, so much bidding, so much activity right now that we're even noticing it in our membership renewals. People are taking longer to get back to us. They get busy. They need to be followed up on and such. So you've got a number of factors, but I think our industry is kind of got one hand tied behind its back, because most of the organizations are small and everybody has a different way of doing the same thing. And so the mass customization aspect is potentially another reason to hesitate.
Yeah, Bill, like one of our clients who's a construction company, they mentioned this year that usually in the winter they kind of get a little slow and then things start ramping up in the spring. But they're like, we haven't actually ramped down. We actually stayed the same or ramping as much as we did. And it kind of affects how we do things, because usually we have that lull and it gives us time to do operations and things like this. But now we're so busy, it's turning into a year-round thing rather than a seasonal thing.
I would definitely believe that's happening. I mean, we're even noticing it ourselves. Even in our little world, we used to have these lulls. August, July, after Stampede in August would be quiet. Nope. We were white knuckle right into the end of the year, and we hit the ground running January 5th with a water main break. And so you're right back up full swing. And it's like, here we are, bouncing up against the tail end of March already. And so we're hearing from everybody that it's, and it's funny, because many times my dad used to say, he was in the industry, contractors are like farmers. It's either raining too much or not raining enough. It's never just the perfect amount of precipitation. And that's kind of what it's like right now. People are glad to see the backlog of work, but they know that it means that extra bandwidth for discretionary stuff like that is going to be harder to find.
And it's challenging, because we always use that, sharpen your saw analogy. And I think that it's great that everybody's busy, but I guess it's one of those things that, this technology is moving so quickly, it's almost like we keep telling clients, you got to carve out a little bit of space to try and understand it and start to integrate it, because it's going to help you be more efficient. So when things do slow down, it's going to help, but it's tough. Yeah. Like, it's too busy. And again, it's a technology that's moving so rapidly. But Bill, where do you see realistically AI providing value in the construction space over the coming 12 to 24 months?
Well, I mean, I think there is a ton of administrative burden baked into the way the construction process happens. And that starts in pre-construction, data management, all the way through to site, recording data, feeding that back into your pre-construction and your estimating. And then there's all kinds of paperwork and tracking documentation and reporting. The administrative burden in construction today is 25 times more than it was in the 90s. And that means you've got a ton of people, ton of resources working on things that don't put the building together any faster.
Right.
But it means you've got more headcount, more overhead, sometimes more delays because some of that administration needs approval. So with an administratively burdensome data full environment such as construction is, I see AI being able to manage that data, create predictability, run more mapping of the data so it informs the process and can help the organization respond to inquiries faster, more accurately, reduce bottlenecks on site or multiple use, redundancy of resources. I can see that. I mean, I couldn't list exactly where, but I imagine there is a ton there. It's all in that non-direct work that I see AI providing huge opportunity to increase accuracy, predictability, increase margins because you're not wasting time, you're not making mistakes, and become more intelligent and not burn your people out pushing paper around.
You just mentioned a lot of things that we, when we're working with our clients, those are the number one things internally that you can kind of see. But do you think then, based on all of that, do you think it'll be driven more by contractors or by owners and developers who want that efficiency, who are starting to recognize, hey, AI can do those kind of things? Are they going to expect that from like the construction companies?
The owners and developers just want the lowest price. That's the problem. That's
Right.
all they've asked for. They want the best quality and the fastest results at the cheapest price.
Yep.
And they still haven't accepted that you can generally only get two, but I believe you can actually only get one. You can just get low price now, but that comes at a cost on time and quality. It used to be, pick which two you want. And the trouble is they do not understand what has happened to the stakeholder chain below them. When they pass on, I want the best thing for the lowest price with zero risk, and they start pushing downhill from that through third-party owners reps onto architects, designers, and consultants, and then onto general contractors, and then onto trades. All that risk, all these unrealistic expectations just cascade and are laundered down through the food chain and land at the feet of the trade contractors who are basically in the eye of the storm because there's no manufacturers out there dumb enough to take on some of these profiles. So they can't shed it to anybody else. And so they're probably the least equipped with margin and influence to do anything differently than try and meet the unrealistic expectations that have been passed on down to them. And yet they're the layer that could benefit the most from AI, from technology, etc. So it's going to have to come from there. And if the owners want higher performance, the owners are going to have to engage the industry differently than they have done. And I'm not sure if their procurement departments would let them.
Do you see that, Bill, being a potential competitive advantage going forward? Because we've seen that too with a lot of our clients. It's the lowest price wins, and sometimes they throw quality to the side, and it's a good, cheap, and fast analogy. Do you think that there's an opportunity for construction companies who can potentially use technology like AI to find those efficiencies so that you're doing the same work, but because you've maybe reduced the administrative load, you've reduced some of that overhead, that'll have some companies standing out from others?
I think that's why I think it has to come from the contractors. Unfortunately, it'll be the outliers that will start. The owners aren't going to say, I want more. They're not going to push down because they don't even know how to ask that question. They're too busy blaming the contractors for the results they got, not realizing that they got what they paid for. And so they're not. There's an increasing amount of owners out there, especially public, that have nobody on staff who's ever worked in the industry. So they don't even know how it works after it leaves their desk. But what I do see is some entrepreneurial contractors recognizing that they can't change it from the top down. They're going to have to find a better way to engage in the dysfunction and find a way to use their resources more effectively than others, reduce the overhead contribution of non-value add work. And by non-value add, I mean it doesn't make the building go up quicker, and use that to give themselves an edge. They can turn estimates around faster. They can take data and plug that into their estimates faster. They can engage their people in work that's more meaningful, because a lot of that manual filling in of stuff a dozen times, and all the errors that happen with that, all these things, now their people are working on value add work, and that will increase morale. It makes the industry a more attractive place for young people to work. It'll give them the edge over their competitors. And as soon as their competitors realize that these folks are winning with a better system, FOMO will pull the others in along with it. And I have a feeling, and that's why this change is slow, and the industry keeps getting accused of not being very innovative. The industry, unfortunately, is massively innovative, but all our innovative capacity is used up solving problems on site and completing design because the drawings weren't complete, and overcoming obstacles and finding real-time solutions every single hour of every single day on site. That's the innovative bandwidth pretty much drained there. The other thing too is our industry is set up to respond. We don't take better ideas to clients. We wait for somebody to decide they want a building. Then they tell us what it has to look like, what it has to be made of, how much they want us to spend, and how long they want us to take doing it, and we just respond. So we're not set up, other than some outliers, to be proactive in saying, no, we have a better idea. The next time you're doing a building, this is the way we think you should do it. And I have a feeling that will start to happen too with some, especially we're seeing a new generation of business owner and the new generation of leaders. We always used to talk about the demographic shift in the entry level side of the business. We always forgot to talk about the demographic shift of leadership and business ownership. You've now got a younger generation in charge who have a longer runway ahead of them, who have grown up through a more technology-based world. And especially Gen Xers are very good at challenging the status quo, because that's all they've done since they popped out. So I think that's going to bring, rather than some 60-year-old white guy like me that's like, I've got 5 years to go. Hopefully it doesn't kill me. I'm not going to change anything now.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of times we find that it is the younger generation, but sometimes we even find some of the more senior leaders, it really is those people that are curious and kind of interested to learn the technology. But are you seeing a lot of talk about, and we ask this in every industry, because like you said, you were at the conference last week, are you starting to hear a lot of talk about AI? Is that kind of the focus, or not so much in the construction space?
Everybody's trying to check the box because it's the buzzword, it's the hype, it's the, if you're not talking about workforce and AI, then how relevant are you going to sound in front of a 400-person room? The trouble is they keep putting panels together of people that are already well down the road of AI. And the way they talk about AI, they make the rest of the room feel stupid for not being as smart as they are. And nobody leaves with a how.
Right.
They tend to leave with a sense of how far behind they are.
Yeah.
And then they leave the conference or the seminar and they go back to work, and something explodes within an hour of them showing up at the office, and they get sucked down, a triage rabbit hole for 4 days. By the time 4 days have gone by, they've forgotten what the talk was about. So I decided that, rather than try to be the AI hero for our members, I think our role is to be the guide, not the hero. And there's too many people trying to be the heroes in the room. And what people need is a guide. And so about a year ago, I was in Seattle and spent a day at AWS headquarters and spent a lot of time talking with the folks from Amazon about where they saw AI. And they're like, we have no idea where AI is going. And I'm like, isn't it funny how there's a million people out there jumping on the AI bandwagon? We know where it's going. Amazon's like, we have no idea where it's going to be in 6 months. We'd be idiots to tell you that. And I'm like, okay, that kind of shifted my thinking. I'm like, okay, so if the guys who do it are willing to admit it's moving that fast, then we got to get that message in front of people. And so it took a while to get around to it, but I partnered with AWS and one of their third parties and decided that if we're going to be the guide, that means we have to help our members begin their journey.
Right.
So we're hosting a session in the middle of April, and it's literally called Finding Your AI On-Ramp. You as a business owner need to find your on-ramp. So our role at this half-day session is to really almost help them become a more intelligent future customer of AI. And how wide do you want that on-ramp to be? How steep or shallow do you want it to be? But you need to find a piece of your business that you can implement it and implement it properly. Don't just have a couple of people sign up for ChatGPT. Protect yourself, make sure you're not feeding the model, all these other security steps. But it's trying to have them leave the room with a bit of a roadmap starting to sketch out in their heads, rather than, well, we don't have their resources and we're not as smart as them, and I got a business to run, I'm going to put it off till next quarter, which basically means next year.
Yeah.
And so being a guide, not a hero. And then the role is to try and get about 50 or 60 people in a room to go through this session. And then I have a group coming in who are going to share how they found their journey and where they have found an on-ramp, where they're at on the on-ramp. And they're residential, but they're still a construction company. And so that's hopefully going to provide people with, wow, there's folks doing it in our backyard.
Yeah.
And then I will see how successful. It's a bit of a gamble because people are busy, but I thought if we can put that guide session in front of people, get them started, see what the feedback is, maybe do another one later in the year because word will get around. Then what's the next step in the journey? They need to get in a room with somebody that can walk them through how you build the on-ramp and who you put on the on-ramp and how you get the pilot going and monitor it and measure it and implement it and then learn from it and decide where the next ramp is going to be in your business, and try and help set our members and our customers. They need to be the heroes. Our job is to try and find the guides that can help them there and put them in an environment where they don't feel they're being sold to. Because nothing will back a contractor off a conversation faster than a sales pitch, because they've bought into them before, they got burned, and they'd rather say no than take that risk again. And it's like we're really there to serve them with information and experts that can help guide them.
I think that's a brilliant approach, Bill, because I mean, we find that all the time. Every client we talk to says, well, guys were in last week and they said their AI solution solves the world's problems. And we always say AI can help improve your efficiencies 10 to 40% at best with today's tools. But if somebody comes in and says it can solve 100%, it's snake oil salesman. And because I agree with you. One of the problems we find, though, is a lot of companies, executives will just turn it over to their IT department. And we always say that AI isn't an IT project. The executive team needs to understand the technology, because then they can help and work with we work with IT teams all the time, but we make sure that we're dealing with the executive team. Otherwise, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that, and I'm sure that'll be part of our conversation in April, is that you need to put a proper working group on it, and that working group needs to be comprised more of the business than of your IT people. In fact, it'll probably go faster because your IT people will worry about things like security and they'll slow things down. And they don't know the problems the business lies awake at night worrying about. And that's one of the other things that kind of inspired us to think this way is so many people have designed apps that solve problems that people don't have.
Yeah.
and then they have to come and sell you on the problem that they believe you have in order to justify their app.
Yeah.
One of my pitches, when I speak to some of our members, is that's the beauty of AI. You can use AI to solve the problems you have in your own time, in your own language, in your own terms, rather than buy something that you really bought for the sake of it because you were too embarrassed showing up at the quarterly meeting of your CEO buddies saying that you still hadn't taken, dipped your toe in the water of AI. So you said, look, I bought an AI app and it's crap, but was started.
And a lot of the things what you said is like it reflects on the things that we like we hear from our clients too, because it's like, well, that's great you made this example or this, but it's more of like, hey, how do I use it for my particular job? How do I do it in our company, in our
Yeah,
setting? Because what you're saying is that's fantastic, that's a good example, but like it doesn't help me specifically, right? In our business, how we do things, because
right.
each company does things so differently. Even
Yep,
if they have even the same tools, they do things completely differently. How their people interact with each other
yep.
with the tools and so on, right? That the big thing that we see not just in the construction industry but across the board, just how people and their processes are so different. The same company, even two companies who are like direct competitors do the exact same thing. You go into their offices, just how they do things completely
Oh yeah.
different than each other, right? So, yeah, that's a big piece in AI. And how do I get it to work for me?
So that's one of the reasons I've given for years when people love to point the finger at the construction industry and say, you guys don't use technology enough. And I'm like, well, who's going to build a drywall software system? You can't get
Right.
two drywallers that think the same way about their business, or plumbers, or electricians, or anybody for that. So who's going to spend a bunch of money developing software for a lot of organizations that are very small and have limited budgets,
Mhm.
and all of whom have totally different ways of doing it, some of whom would still use Lotus 123 if it was available because it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one thing I wanted to talk about, and this is unique in this space, because we talked with lawyers, we talked professional services, but I think in the trades, in this particular sense, the impact of jobs may be reverse, maybe to the point it's like, oh, there's a lot of talks like, oh, this industry will get rid of a lot of these jobs. I'm looking at the construction industry. You could get an influx of jobs because of a lot of the type of jobs, the white collar jobs that might be replaced with AI. Like what our client says, as long as you need roads and sewers, we're always going to be hiring. So there's always and so what is your thoughts on that and the impact of, I guess, indirect impact of AI on jobs on other industries, and then maybe a boon to your industry?
Well, the expression I like is AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to use it well will.
Yeah.
And that's at the individual level. But I think in the contractor level, you could apply that to companies. AI is not going to take your business away from you, but a business that knows how to leverage it might just take all the business there is and leave you with nothing. To our
Well,
point that we're talking about earlier.
and I think that's that we talked in an earlier session about, all the if Waymo comes in and you've got all these driverless cars, and let's say there's 1,500 taxi drivers that aren't driving cabs anymore, there could be 1,500 potential tradespeople that we could get trained up, even though they may not win a swing a hammer. But I think that that's hopefully that'll help solve some of that employment, and any empty positions in the construction space.
Yeah, and the other expression I heard recently, and I really liked it because it actually echoes what I've heard some companies have done. AI is not going to take away the job of an electrician, but AI will book his next appointment while he's up the ladder installing his current lighting installation. AI can be booking, can be reserving, can be putting the next order together by creating that AI model. And there's an HVAC contractor in the US that did that. They saved $3 million in the first year just because the AI made sure when appointments got changed, they didn't have a dead truck for 3 hours that was unable to be redeployed somewhere else. Just simple things like that manually are terrible. That annoys your office people because they weren't able to solve it. And it really annoys your crews because they might have to go home early and get less hours
Yeah.
because they weren't able to be redeployed in time. And I really think that AI for our industry's got probably two. You've got the administrative area, which is where I think the early wins exist. But then you have the on-site aspects too, where AI can process information faster. AI can take site data, send it back to the office, compare it with, and send it back. Turnaround time, RFIs from site to the architect or the engineer, could be more intelligently turned around, and the changes could be made to the BIM model all live, and all these things are happening. So I see it eventually blurring the lines across all the different stakeholders and all the different stages of a project. It is not going to replace the cognitive decision making you have to do every 5 minutes when you're trying to make something work, trying to put something together, or trying to understand this thing that's in your way that wasn't meant to be there, and finding a real-time solution. Because if you don't, your crew's going home and you could be a week behind, and you'll probably be blamed for the delay.
I give you huge credit, Bill, for doing your session in April, because again, like we do presentations every week to executive teams, and it very much is just kind of, we find most people are intimidated by it because they don't understand it. And I think that's for us when we go in and we show some of the basic demos of here's the basics of what you can do, but here's kind of what's coming down the line, but showing real simple, relatable examples. You can see the light going off when people start to look at their specific company to kind of go, well, wait a minute. An example, a construction company, they have a lot of their crews, their primary languages are, what is it? Spanish and
Arabic.
I forget, Arabic. So they've got crews out in the field who have to do daily notes, but their notes are usually, it was a good day or there was an accident, but they don't have a whole lot of, we're looking at building a tool where you can actually use voice to text so that they can actually speak in their native language to update their daily progress. So little things like that, just trying to find efficiencies that I think will help out in the field.
A site superintendent that doesn't have to stay on site for an extra hour to write a log for the day can actually speak it on the way home while they're driving, and probably give a much more detailed report because their hand won't get tired. And you speak and think faster than you write, and very often you forget your train of thought because you haven't got it all written down in time. Now 10-15 years plus from now, it's going to be much worse because of the volume of retirements that we're going to see. And the amount of tribal knowledge that is acquired over a 40-year life cycle plus in this industry that walks out the door potentially with experienced individuals, whether they're estimators, project managers, or actual tradespeople or site people. There could be incredible potential to capture some of that knowledge and then turn it into training and mentoring resources for those that are earlier in their career, and train the model to be able to deliver help arrive at answers that you'd normally have to go to the senior guy, and he's not there or she's not there anymore. Who do I go to now? Well, if there had been some kind of capture process, you could end up with an unbelievable ability to accelerate. Because one of our problems in Alberta is because we run this boom and bust cycle. Every time there's been a boom, we've staffed up. Every time it goes down, we staff down, but we don't staff down with senior people because we need their experience. We staff down below them, and then we staff up again. And what's happened is we've ended up with these big succession gaps of experience that we're now beginning to see as the 60 plus are beginning to retire because they're tired and it's maybe not as fun as it used to be. There's potentially going to be some bigger gaps that appear over the next little while. That's why we say that we believe the workforce challenge is a 20-year problem. It's not fix it by next spring or fix it by Christmas 2027. We're going to be fixing this in a major way for the next 20 plus years, because we've also got to really almost rebrand the industry in the eyes of society, who all think that construction is a third-rate career.
Leads to my next question here is, where do you think then, what will separate construction companies that definitely succeed in this environment versus those that kind of fall behind or are not successful over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think the more progressive thinkers will attract the talent. I think they'll be more likely to attract and keep the talent and keep them engaged. I think they'll find solutions that reduce their overhead burden, which, imagine if you could reduce, because the overhead for a trade contractor can be over 20%, depending on the type of contractor, because they don't charge everything to the project as some others do. So they just blend it out over everything they do. Well, imagine if you could reduce your overhead by 5%. Say, okay, I'm going to take 2.5%, put that to the bottom line. I'm going to take, 1%, and bonus people, I'm going to take another 1.5%, and I'm going to use that to invest in more AI. So I'm a little bit of profitability for the company and the shareholders, some bonuses for those who made it happen, and I now have an R&D budget that is being driven because I'm doing R&D. And now you're creating a self-perpetuating cycle that will just continue to chip away. And I do think one of the myths that needs to be busted is you don't have to do this massive, shiny AI revolution overnight. You can chip away at small parts of your business, become more effective over time. And that's why I think the more progressive business owners tend to be better employers because they value people in a different way. And they're going to do the things that people want to be a part of. They're probably going to train their people and give the people the opportunity to work on the tools that are allowing them to feel a sense of achievement rather than a sense of frustration. That will all accumulate into, I think, a really successful model.
I think that's a great point, Bill, because again, we have a client that, again, it's a lot of those non-sexy tasks. We had one that was doing payroll reconciliation every week, and it was taking their one staff member 6 to 8 hours a week, and it was spreadsheet to timesheet back and forth. Well, we went in and created a real simple automation for them, and now they can do that same task in about 15 minutes.
Right.
So now they've got 6 or 7 hours back in a week to get to those tasks that they never get around to, that just keep building up on the list. And again, you're right. I think if companies just get into the game, you don't have to jump in both feet and get scared by it, but at least start looking into it. Start getting curious.
The other thing, what do people do with non-sexy tasks? They put them off.
Right. Yep.
It's, please give me something sexy to do so I don't have to do this. And that's not because the non-sexy task isn't important. It's because it's no fun to do. If you find a way to take 8 hours and turn it into 15 minutes, the sexy task, it becomes a sexy task because it allows you to stick with the work that you prefer doing, where you feel like you're contributing more value. I mean, if all you've done is shuffle paper for 2 years, can you really drive by a project and say, I helped build that?
Yeah.
Whereas if you were able to solve problems, get information to site, help set the crews up to be successful, avoid a whole bunch of pitfalls because you had a tool that warned you in advance so you didn't make the same mistake again, now you're helping building that building. And now everybody, the people in the office, feel the same sense of pride that the folks in the field do. I think the people in the office of a lot of organizations have lost their connection to that pride because the piles of paper, they can't see the buildings they're building from behind the piles of paper and process and multiple monitors that they're buried behind.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for taking the time. I think it's great insight from yourself, and really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today, and look forward to seeing what comes from the construction space in Alberta and Calgary in the coming years here for sure.
Well, we have a ton of work, and we have a significant backlog of major projects that are either in the ground now, or if they all happen, they're all going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. There's a number of contractors have a significant backlog today with more work coming. All this is happening whilst until recently we had a mid-60s dollar barrel of oil. This is not a typical boom. This is because of the population increase, because of the diversification of our economy, because none of these projects are office buildings. They're complex, they're large, they're changing lifestyle, improving the quality of life in the city. They're going to attract more people. So if there was ever a time to invest and get effective, you now have a runway of work that can let you do that. And I hope it's possible that a bunch of organizations can look back 5 years from now and go, remember when we still used Excel to do that? Boy, look at us now.
Still using Excel.
But there will be some. Go see, I told you Excel worked. But
Yes.
There'll always be that.
Exactly.
Learn how AI can impact your business by watching these videos here. Enjoy today's episode? Want to learn how AI can impact your business? Then please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.